Hello everyone and welcome to the YouTube channel of BeingACCA. This is Tushita Gupta, ACCA affiliate, and in this video we are revising chapter number 10, which is budgeting. So first of all, let's try to understand what exactly is a budget. So if we talk about a budget is basically a quantitative plan. Quantitative as in it involves numbers. It's a quantitative plan prepared for a specific time period. We are looking at, let's suppose, a budget for 6 months. So the specific time period is 6 months for which we are creating a quantitative plan. Now let's also try to understand what are the purposes of budgeting. Why do we do budgeting? Where does it help? So it'll help you in planning, it'll help you in control, it'll help you in communication, it'll help you in coordination, it'll also help you in evaluation, it'll also help you in motivation, it's also going to help you in authorization, and it's also going to help you in delegation. So these are a few purposes, or the few areas where budgeting helps us. So now coming on to different management styles which have been given by Hopwood. So different managers can use or employ different styles. So first of all, the first kind of style is the budget constraint style. Budget constraint style. So what happens over here is that the manager is basically evaluated on the ability to achieve short-term budgets. So short-term. And another key point over here, if we talk about behavioral aspects, so there will be job-related pressure. It may result in short-term decision making at the expense of the long-term goals. Just because we want to manipulate or have good results in the short term, we might not think, if some decision, even though it's benefiting us in the short run, but it's, going to harm us in the future. So it may lead to such decisions. And again, it can result in manipulation of data. So this is how budget constraint style management works. Then another style of management is the profit conscious style. So as the name suggests, over here in this management style, what happens is that your manager is evaluated on the ability to reduce the costs and increase profits in the long term. So the disadvantage that we discussed above, that there can be decisions which can be taken in the short term, even though they cause us harm in the longer run. So over here, this problem is solved. There is less job related pressure. The better there are, the relations between the colleagues are better, and there is also less manipulation of data. Another type of management style that we have is the non-accounting style. So as the name suggests, here itself, managers are evaluated on non-accounting performance indicators like quality and customer satisfaction. So if we talk about the aspects over here, so there will be a lesser concern for accounting information, and it will require significant and stringent monitoring of performance against the budget. Now here you're not using any sort of accounting performance indicators, so it becomes all the more important that you are monitoring the performance quite like well in a significant and stringent manner. Now if we talk about the difficulty levels of budgets, so if we talk about the difficulty levels when it comes to budgets, so the first, kind of difficulty there can be is that there can be an expectations budget, and another type can be an aspirations budget. So over here also the name is pretty self-explanatory. Expectations budget is basically based on your current achievable levels. Current achievable levels. And if you talk about the aspirations budget, it is set at a level which exceeds the current level, exceeds current level. So whatever you have achieved till now, it is something which is aspiration, as it's a target for yourself. So you are exceeding from where you have currently reached and you want more. So another characteristic is that it is unlikely to motivate managers, because it's at the current level, we are already there, so there will be no motivation, unlikely to motivate managers. Aspirations budget is, however, on the other hand, may motivate managers if it is attainable, but again, there will be an adverse variance if it is too difficult to attain. So there are both possibilities over here. If it is something which can be achieved, then it will motivate. If this is too difficult, then there will be a negative variance, and the managers will be demotivated. Another point which we can talk about in the expectations budget is that it may give you more accurate forecasts, more accurate forecasts for resource planning, control, and performance evaluation. So this is what we know about the two types of difficulty levels of budgets. Now, another thing which we can talk about is budgeting and participation. What kind of participation is there when it comes to setting of the budgets? So there can be two types of budgets. Either it can be an imposed style, or it can be a participatory style. So over here, like the names are suggesting, it's also called a top to down approach. The top management is imposing the budget on the down level. So this is also called the top to down approach. And in the participatory one, they are taking into account the feedback or whatever inputs that the juniors are giving. So this is also called, you can say, bottom up approach. So this is the bottom up approach. So participatory itself means that, the people, the employees are also taking part in setting these budgets. So if we talk about this budget first, the participatory one, there is going to be an improved morale, because they are involved in setting targets, so their morale is going to be increased, because they'll think that the management cares about our opinions. Managers are more likely to accept the targets and to strive, because it is something that is set by them, so they are more likely to accept the budgets and the targets. Another advantage over here will be immediate managers will have more detailed knowledge of their particular part of the business, and they will be able to set more realistic budgets. So it's the immediate people who are working towards the thing, so they know how much can be achieved, so more realistic budgets can be set. Another advantage, so now coming to the top to down approach, imposed style, there are advantages over here that if you involve managers, it can be time consuming. If you involve the lower level managers also, or all employees, it can be time consuming, so you save time. Another advantage over here is that managers may not have the skills. So the top management is skilled, so they will be setting the budget well. So the top management has skills and lower management may not have the skills. Senior managers have better overall view of the company and its resources. Definitely, this is another advantage that they have. Senior senior management has better overview of the company. Another advantage over here will be that senior managers are also aware of the long-term strategic goals of the organization, so they will set the goals accordingly. Another thing is that, the managers who are setting targets for themselves, they may set too easy targets. So there will be a budget, there may be a budgetary slack or bias, and if the top management is doing it, then this gets avoided. Another advantage over here will be that managers cannot misuse the budgets to other budget holders' disadvantage. So, maybe if I am competing with another division's manager, I will not be able to misuse the budget to cause any sort of difficulty to the person who I am competing with. So, managers cannot misuse the budgets to others' disadvantage. Another point which we have is that a more objective or fresher perspective is gained. And another advantage is that if participation is only pseudo participation, that means false participation, and the budgets are drastically changed by managers, then it may demotivate the staff. So it's better that you do not involve them in the first place. If you involve and you do not set the targets according to them, then it will be all a waste and they will be demotivated. So pseudo participation. Now I move on to incremental budgets. Incremental budgets are basically those kind of budgets, which are based on the previous periods, and they are accounted for the increases or decreases that they are going to be in the coming period. So it's based on a previous budget or actual result. So what are the advantages of incremental budgets? Basically, you account for changes like inflation. So if there's going to be inflation, you add the inflation and that budget goes on. So the advantages in this case is going to be this is the quickest because you're keeping the data constant and just accounting for the changes, and it'll prevent conflict now that the budget is already set since the previous year and it's a continuation, so conflicts will be prevented. Now, if I talk about the disadvantages, so if incremental budgeting is used, what can be the possible disadvantages? First is that the previous problems, such as, where maybe there were inefficiencies, so they also get carried. Inefficiencies, problems get carried to the next period. So just because we made some error this time, we are also accounting for that error to happen in this time, whereas it should not be happen to the next period. Now, another disadvantage is that it is an inefficient form of budget, as it may encourage wasteful spending by the managers. So probably just because the previous time there was some expenditure, and even though it's not required in this period, they may still add it because it's the incremental method of budgeting. So there can be a wasteful expenditure. Now talking about zero-based budgets next. Zero-based budgeting. So over here, what we are doing is we are setting all of the things to zero. So probably if this was my costs and expenses, revenues and everything, so everything that I have in my budget is going to be taken down to zero. So probably if this was $100,000, I'm bringing it down to zero and then evaluating how much it actually should be. So this is a lengthy, time consuming process. First, let's try to understand what all steps do we have in zero-based budgeting. So if we talk about the steps, the first step is to find out a decision package. So decision package, what do we mean by that? Basically, it is a document that states the purpose of the activity, it analyzes the cost of the activities, and it will also assess the consequences of not conducting the activity. When it comes to decision packages, there are two scenarios that are possible. First, these can be mutually exclusive packages. So if we talk about mutually exclusive, you would probably have heard this term before. This means that there are different methods of doing the same thing and only one out of these is going to be picked. Another thing is an incremental package. So what do we mean by this? Over here, your productivity will be divided into series of activities. So there will be a basic package that is the minimum amount of work, and then there will be an additional package where you see that, what are the extra features that we can add, and they will be at the additional cost. Now, the second step in this process is going to be evaluation and ranking of these packages. Evaluation and ranking. And how are we going to do that? Using the cost benefit analysis. So cost benefit analysis will be used to evaluate these decision packages and then rank them. Now on the third step is going to be that on the basis of this ranking, you're going to allocate the resources, whichever decision package it is that you're choosing, you're going to allocate the resources accordingly to carry out that decision package. So now I move on to the advantages. If we discuss the advantages, basically there's going to be an efficient allocation of resources because we are setting everything to zero, and only the amount of expenditure which is actually necessary is going to get allocated. So there's going to be an efficient allocation of resources. Second advantage is that inefficient operations are removed and wasteful expenditure is avoided, pretty much similar to the first point. Another advantage that we have is that increases the staff involvement, increases staff involvement. Now that every expenditure is going to be done from calculated from scratch, there's going to be data that's going to be needed, and more staff will be involved at all levels. Another advantage of ZBB is that managers are forced to consider alternatives and develop a questioning. So develop a questioning. So they will try to look for creative ways, maybe something that they did earlier for a big amount of money. Maybe this time they figure some way out to do it at a cheaper price. Now, if we talk about disadvantages, it's costly, it's time consuming. Another disadvantage is that ranking can be subjective. It can be subjective in scenarios where the benefits are qualitative in nature. It's not something which can be quantified in terms of money. If it's a qualitative benefit, then the ranking can be subjective. Another disadvantage is that it may emphasize on short-term benefit at the cost of long-term benefits. Another disadvantage is that organization may not have the required management skills or information systems to provide suitable information to construct decision packages. So, may not have required information. Now, another type of budget which we have in our syllabus is a rolling budget. So when I talk about a rolling budget, as the name itself suggests, it keeps on rolling. So it is updated by adding a new period and deducting the earliest one. So if you have an annual plan that is broken down into months or quarters, and a detailed plan is made for the immediate period, less detailed for the future periods. So it is, suitable when it comes to uncertain conditions. Now, if I talk about what advantages this sort of budget offers me, it's realistic. It's realistic. It's accurate. The budget that it prepares, it's accurate because, uncertainty is reduced. Another thing is that control will be based on a recent plan. Another advantage that we have is that forces management to take budgeting process seriously. Now, let's talk about the disadvantages also. If I talk about the disadvantages of rolling budgets, first of all, it's more time consuming as well as costly. If I talk about more disadvantages, it's going to increase the budgeting work, and it may lead to less control over actual results. Another disadvantage which we can face over here is that there might be an off-putting effect on managers who would consider budgeting as a non-value adding activity due to frequent budgeting. So, off-putting effect on managers. Right. So now we move to another type of budget, which is the activity-based budget or ABB. So this is focused on value adding and variance feedback processes, value adding and variance feedback processes. Now, over here also, if I talk about the advantages that this offers, that it's going to be pretty similar to ABC costing. It will draw your attention to activities that drive the cost, which is important if your overheads are high. Draws attention to activities that drive costs. Another advantage that ABB will give you is that it provides a useful basis for cost control by comparing actual results to the expectations. So, useful basis for cost control. Another advantage that it has is that it provides useful information for TQM, total quality management. Now, coming to the disadvantages. If I talk about the disadvantages of ABB, again, it's time consuming. Another disadvantage that it has is that it might be difficult to identify clear individual responsibility for individual activities. This point is similar to ABC costing also. Now, let's talk about two types of controls which we have. First of all, there's a feedback control, and then there's a feed forward control. So if I talk about feedback control, basically there can be two types of feedback. Either it can be a positive feedback or it can be a negative feedback. Positive feedback will basically be there to reinforce a deviation from standard. The inputs or the processes will not be altered. Now, when it comes to negative feedback, it is taken to reverse a deviation. This could be by amending inputs or processes so that the system reverts to a ready state. When we talk about feed forward control, it is operated by comparing budgets against a forecast. Control action is triggered by the differences between budgeted and forecast results. So feed forward happens even before the actual performance has happened. It's only comparing my budget against what I have forecast for the production. So this is happening even before actual production has taken place. If I talk about feedback, actual production has taken place and we are evaluating the budgets and the actuals. Now, if we talk about sources of information for budgeting, so there can be multiple sources which we can take information from to prepare our budgets. So there can be previous year's results, actual results. There can be other internal sources. There can be work study techniques and technical estimates. There can be models like your EOQ model, and there can be external sources which will give you information like supplier price lists, strategic analysis of the economic environment. So the fifth source is external sources of information. Now, this chapter also talks about the techniques to deal with uncertainty. When there is uncertainty, how can you deal with uncertainty? Here are some techniques. So, you can either employ flexible budgets, you can either employ rolling budgets, you can also make use of sensitivity analysis. Variables can be changed one at a time and a large number of budgets can be prepared. And another technique which you can possibly use is simulation. Under a simulation, you can change more than one variable at once. So with this also, you will know what is going to happen in which scenario. Now, this chapter also discusses about spreadsheets. So about spreadsheets, there are a few advantages and disadvantages. You all know what a spreadsheet is. You're going to attempt your exam on it. So advantages, if we talk about, it can contain a large volume of information. Another advantage is that if you amend or if you edit one figure, all of the other figures, the remaining figures are automatically recalculated. So, if you've put in the formulas correctly, if you change one figure, all of the remaining data which follows after that, so automatically recalculated. Third advantage, if we talk about, can be that results can be printed, shared electronically, quickly and easily. So sharing is quick and easy. If I have a spreadsheet, I can quickly share it to other people and very easily also. And spreadsheets can also represent your data graphically. So graphical representation. Now, if I talk about the disadvantages, spreadsheets for a particular budgeting application will take time to develop. Okay. Another disadvantage can be that they can be accidentally changed or deleted. Changed or deleted. Another disadvantage is that there may be errors which lead to an invalid output. Another disadvantage is that data will be used, and it will be subject to a high degree of uncertainty. High degree of uncertainty. Another disadvantage that we have is there can be security issues. Another disadvantage can be that there can be version control issues. So probably if you've prepared something on an old spreadsheet software and now the new one has developed, you may face issues in opening that file on the new version. Another disadvantage is that educating your staff to use spreadsheets can be time consuming. So educating staff can be time consuming. We are left with now the last topic of this chapter, which talks about beyond budgeting. This is also one of the methods of budgeting, and if we talk about the SEMA definition, it's the idea that companies need to move beyond budgeting because of the inherent flaws in budgeting, especially when used to set incentive contracts. So basically, there are 6 principles when it comes to beyond budgeting. First, that the organization should have clear principles and boundaries. Clear principles and boundaries. The next principle of beyond budgeting is that targets should be based on relative success. Targets should be based on relative success. Another principle is that managers should be given high decision making freedom. So they should be able to decide and take the decisions. High decision making freedom. Another principle is that responsibility for decisions that generate value should be placed with the frontline teams. That means the people who are performing the the immediate task. Those people should have the responsibility. Frontline teams should be made responsible for relationships with customers, associate businesses, and suppliers. So relationships. And the sixth and the last principle is that information support systems should be transparent and ethical. Whatever are the sources which you are using for your information, these sources should be transparent and ethical. Now, talking about the benefits that it's going to give you if you use beyond budgeting, first of all, there's going to be a faster response time. Another benefit is that there's going to be better innovation. Another point that there's going to be lower costs. And the last benefit which we talk about, that there will be improved customer and supplier loyalty. So with this, we have come to an end to chapter number 10, which was about budgeting. In the next video, we will meet to revise chapter number 11, which is about quantitative techniques. Thank you so much for watching.